I never thought I'd see the day when I felt completely invisible in my own marriage. I always considered myself a good wife. I made the house feel like home. I remembered birthdays and anniversaries. I even cooked his favorite meals without him asking. I wasn't perfect, but I thought I was enough. Yet somehow, somewhere along the way, something shifted. I caught a glimpse of it for the first time that Tuesday afternoon, and I can't stop replaying it in my head. It started as a mundane day, the kind that feels normal until your life suddenly tilts sideways. I had been at work all morning, buried in spreadsheets and endless emails at a law firm downtown. My mornings are usually hectic, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, trying not to forget my lunch in the chaos of court filings and client calls. That day, I left early, planning to surprise Mike with lunch because he'd been swamped at the marketing agency he works at. Our life, our routine, had always been predictable but comfortable, the kind of suburban stability I thought I'd signed up for. I got home around 1:30, my little beige sedan rolling into the driveway. I was looking forward to this small gesture of making him feel seen. But the moment I stepped onto our porch, I noticed something that made my stomach twist like a bad movie scene. Our neighbor, Jessica, the one who moved in last year, bubbly, always so impossibly cheerful, the kind of woman who seems to light up every room, was in our yard. I didn't think anything of it at first. I waved from the porch, calling out, "Hey Jessica, how's it going?" She waved back, a little too eagerly, almost shyly, which I chalked up to neighborly politeness. Mike's car was in the driveway too, which was unusual for that hour. I figured maybe he had lunch plans with a client or something. I unlocked the door and headed inside, thinking I'd start warming the leftovers I'd brought. Then I heard laughter, Mike's laughter, unmistakable, the kind that normally fills the room with warmth. But this laughter, this time, sounded different. It was soft, intimate, and there was a tremor in it that made me pause mid-step. I froze in the doorway, trying to convince myself that maybe I was imagining things. Maybe they were talking about something funny from work. But then I heard Jessica's voice, lower, almost whispering, and it made my chest tighten. The words weren't meant for me, but I caught them anyway. "You're really cute when you do that." I felt like someone had just shoved an ice cube down my spine. Cute? That word, the tone, the way it was said, it wasn't harmless. Not in that context. I edged closer to the kitchen, trying to convince myself I was just being paranoid, that maybe it was some innocent flirtation I was misreading. I shouldn't have peeked. I shouldn't have been that curious. But curiosity has this way of grabbing you, especially when something in your gut is screaming that something's wrong. I tiptoed toward the hallway and peered into our living room. That's when I saw them, Mike and Jessica, sitting on our couch, way too close. His hand wasn't on his lap. It was resting lightly on the back of the couch, just behind her shoulders, and I could see how she leaned into it, her hair brushing against his arm. My stomach churned, my hands shook, and I couldn't even breathe properly. It was surreal. My husband, the man I trusted, the man I thought was devoted to me, was flirting with her. And he wasn't subtle. His eyes were just on her face. They lingered. The smile, the soft tilt of his head, the quiet laugh, it all screamed a secret intimacy that didn't belong in our living room. I wanted to scream. I wanted to storm in and demand explanations, but part of me froze, rooted to the spot like a deer caught in headlights. I watched them for what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, and she giggled, leaning closer, their knees almost touching. I can't describe the mix of betrayal and disbelief that hit me. It wasn't just the act. It was the look in his eyes, the way he was present with her in a way I thought was reserved only for me. I started replaying the past few months in my head. The small arguments that never got resolved, the nights he said he was working late but smelled like someone else's perfume, the subtle distance that had started creeping in between us. Was this always happening and I just didn't see it? My mind was spinning so fast it hurt. I wanted to close my eyes and wish it away, but I couldn't. I had front row seats to a scene I never thought I'd witness. I remember the physical sensation of disbelief, the hollow ache in my chest, the lump in my throat that made it hard to swallow. I felt like my own skin betrayed me. My hands started shaking uncontrollably, and I realized I had to move. I could either confront them and risk a scene, or I could leave and try to think rationally. But my feet moved on their own, dragging me toward the kitchen, pretending to do something, anything that made it seem like I was just home, minding my own business. I clutched the sandwich I'd brought, pretending to unwrap it, but I wasn't hungry. I couldn't eat. Every laugh, every glance, every whisper between them made my heart pound faster, like I was watching my life being rewritten right in front of me. And then it happened. Jessica leaned forward, and he brushed his fingers against her cheek. Just a ghost of a touch, but I swear the room froze. Time stopped. The sound of traffic outside, the hum of our refrigerator, all of it faded, and all I could see was that gesture, that small, intimate, impossible gesture. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to cry. I wanted to vanish and take my life back in a way that would erase this memory from existence. But I didn't. I just stood there, frozen, watching as if I were a spectator in someone else's life. And then the worst part, the one that hit me the hardest, he looked up and our eyes met. Mike's gaze locked onto mine for just a second, and in that instant, a whole lifetime of trust shattered. His eyes widened, almost in panic, like he hadn't realized I was home, like he hadn't considered that I might catch this. But there was something else too. A flicker of guilt, maybe, but it was fleeting. Not enough to undo what I had just witnessed, not enough to make it any less real. And just like that, he scrambled, mumbling something incoherent, while Jessica jumped up, clutching her phone like nothing had happened, and left. The door slammed behind her, a sharp, echoing punctuation to the chaos in my head. Mike stood there, frozen, his face pale, like a ghost had walked through him. I wanted to scream at him, to accuse him, to ask why, but all I could manage was a broken, trembling whisper. What the hell was that? He stammered, then swallowed hard, and for the first time, I noticed the way his hand shook, not just his posture, but his whole body. I didn't know whether to feel relief that he wasn't entirely cold-hearted or rage that he could let this happen at all. My voice cracked, my knees almost buckled, and I realized I was shaking from head to toe. He tried to explain, fumbling over words, saying it was harmless, that she was just joking around, but the memory of what I saw made me feel like I was drowning in a room with no air. His explanations felt thin, flimsy, like paper in a storm. And in that storm, I remembered every subtle sign I'd ignored. The late nights, the secretive texts, the smiles that weren't for me. Every small thing piled up into a mountain of proof in my mind, and yet here he was, pretending it wasn't real. I couldn't breathe. I left the room, went into the bathroom, shut the door, and pressed my hands to my face. I cried, not even loud, just a steady, choking, endless sobbing that seemed to come from the very depths of my body. I felt humiliated, not just because he had done this, but because I'd been blind, because I had trusted, because I had believed, and because now, standing in the bathroom, I realized nothing in my world would feel the same again. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a haze. I couldn't focus on work, on dinner, on anything. I kept replaying the scene over and over, trying to convince myself that maybe I had imagined it, that maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought, but it was. Every detail was burned into my memory. The way he leaned toward her, the way she laughed at things only he said, the subtle touches that weren't casual, the way the air between them seemed charged, electric, like something alive and forbidden. And the worst part? I still loved him. I hated that I loved him, that despite everything I had seen, my brain kept trying to find a reason to forgive, to rationalize, to believe in the man I thought I knew. But love isn't blind, it's stubborn. And right now, my love was twisting into something sharp, cutting through my chest every time I remembered that look in his eyes when he realized I had caught them. I walked through the house like a ghost that evening, passing the couch where it all happened, staring at the spot where she had sat, imagining the shadow of her body there. I couldn't bring myself to sit there, to use our space the way I had always used it. It felt contaminated, like an invisible mark had been left behind. I thought about calling my mom, my best friend, anyone, but what could I say? How do you even start a conversation about something like this? Hey, I just caught my husband flirting with our neighbor and I think my life is over? It sounded absurd, but it was my reality. And Mike avoided eye contact. He hovered in the kitchen, pretending to make dinner, pretending to be normal, but I could see it in his eyes. The guilt, the fear, the mess of emotions he couldn't hide. It made me angrier, the way he tried to act like life could carry on as if nothing had happened, like a dance sitcom where a shocking scene is just a plot point and everyone moves on. But this wasn't a TV show. This was my marriage, my life, my trust, and it was all crumbling in slow motion right in front of me. By bedtime, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the air conditioner, feeling the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I kept imagining scenarios, replaying every angle. Was this just flirting? Had it gone further? Did he even love me anymore? Or was I just a placeholder while he explored something else? The questions were endless, torturous. I felt sick, hollow, angry, desperate, and heartbroken all at once. And yet, beneath it all, there was that whisper of hope, that desperate, painful thread of denial that maybe tomorrow he'd wake up and regret it, that maybe he'd reach for me, apologize, and it would all be a mistake, a bad dream. I knew in my heart that this hope was fragile, maybe even foolish, but it was all I had. I clutched it like a life raft in a storm of doubt. And that's when I realized something terrifying. I didn't just catch him flirting. I caught the truth about us. The cracks I had ignored, the distance I had excused, the feelings I had brushed off, they were all real, and they were all there long before this Tuesday afternoon. And now, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence that felt heavier than any words, I understood that nothing would ever be the same. Not the house, not our routines, not our laughter, and certainly not me. I felt like a stranger in my own life, watching someone else take my place on the couch, in my home, in my husband's heart, and the thought of that, of her there, of him choosing her attention over mine, was almost unbearable. My mind kept looping, circling back to the same image over and over. Him smiling at her, leaning close, touching her like he once touched me, but with that spark, that electricity, that intimacy I hadn't felt in months. It was a cruel, sharp revelation that cut through everything I thought I knew. And the worst part? I couldn't unsee it. I woke up the next morning feeling hollow, like someone had carved out the part of me that trusted, the part that believed in us. Sleep didn't help. I kept seeing her, her laughing face, the way she leaned into him, how easily she seemed to exist in the space that was mine. I went through the motions at work, but my mind wasn't there. Every text notification made my chest tighten. Every ping on my phone, I imagined it was him, sending some innocent message to her. I didn't want to think that, but I couldn't stop. By lunchtime, I was trembling, gripping my salad fork like a lifeline. I ended up walking to the parking lot, driving aimlessly, just to get out of the office, just to breathe somewhere that wasn't our house. I thought about confronting him again, but the memory of that blank, guilty look in his eyes when he realized I'd caught them flashed in my mind. Part of me wanted to see him squirm, to make him feel every ounce of what I felt. But another part, maybe the worst part, still ached to reach for him, to understand why, to find any excuse that could make this make sense. I came home that evening, my hands shaking as I unlocked the door. The house was quiet, too quiet. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the faint creak of the floorboards, but no laughter, no voices. I found him in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. He looked up when I walked in, and I could see the way he froze for a split second, like he had hoped I wouldn't confront him again. But this time, I didn't speak right away. I just studied him. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, like he'd been sitting on the couch with someone he shouldn't have. His hair was mussed, his tie loose. The evidence was all there, screaming at me in a way no words could deny. Finally, I said it. "So, are we just pretending yesterday didn't happen?" My voice was steady, but inside I was a storm. He avoided my gaze, staring at the countertop like the words were written in invisible ink only he could see. It's not what you think," he started, fumbling with the coffee mug in his hands. "It's just Jessica. She's fun to talk to," and I cut him off, the words coming out sharper than I intended. Fun to talk to? Mike, you were touching her face. You were leaning into her. You were smiling at her like she was the only person in the world. I couldn't hold it back anymore. The anger bubbled up, mixed with heartbreak, and for the first time, I slammed my hand against the counter, shaking with it. I wanted him to feel it, to know how deeply he had torn something out of me. He swallowed hard and finally looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the flicker of panic, maybe guilt, maybe fear. I don't know which. I messed up, he said quietly, as if whispering it would make it less real. My heart twisted at the admission, but it didn't heal. It didn't erase the vision of them on my couch, laughing and leaning together, intimate in a way that should have been ours alone. And then, The thing that broke me even more, he tried to reach for me. He stepped closer and I instinctively recoiled, my whole body rejecting him, rejecting the touch that I used to crave. He paused, and I saw it. The shame, the desperation, the realization that he couldn't undo this, no matter how much he wanted to. The following days were unbearable. I started noticing things I had ignored for months. The way his phone always seemed to buzz when he stepped away, the way he sometimes lingered too long at the office, the way he had started avoiding my parents' visits, claiming he needed to work. I became hyper-aware, constantly checking, constantly watching, and it made me feel insane. I hated myself for it, but the betrayal had awakened a vigilance I couldn't turn off. I started walking through our neighborhood differently, noticing Jessica's house, noticing the way she smiled at him when she waved from her porch. My chest would tighten, my stomach would knot, and suddenly, the quiet suburban streets we had always loved felt like a minefield. I caught myself imagining her in our house, in my kitchen, laughing at his jokes, making him feel alive in a way I no longer could. Then came Friday night. He said he was going out with a few guys from work. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust him, but my intuition screamed otherwise. I decided to follow him. Not stalk, I told myself, just observe. I left my car parked a few blocks away, keeping my headlights off, and watched as he pulled into Jessica's driveway. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight I thought they'd crumple. I sat there, heart hammering, feeling every pulse like a warning siren. I saw her come out onto the porch, and then, like a punch to the gut, I watched them hug. Too long, too intimate. Then they disappeared inside. I drove home, my stomach churning, my head pounding. I felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and envy. Envy that she had what I had thought was mine. The next morning, I confronted him. I had to. I couldn't sit in silence anymore. He didn't deny it this time. He admitted he went over there, spent the night, and just talked. But I could see through it. I could see the way he avoided certain details, the way his eyes darted when he mentioned her name. And I realized, with a sick, sinking feeling, that this wasn't about a single mistake. This was a pattern, a choice he was making every day, one that slowly, insidiously, chipped away at the foundation of our marriage. I wanted to scream, to rage, to throw things, but instead I felt hollow, like I had no energy left to express my grief in any physical way. I just stood there, letting him talk, letting him stumble over words, letting him prove over and over that he had become a stranger in the home we shared. I spent that entire week in a daze. Every interaction with him felt like a minefield. I couldn't laugh at his jokes, couldn't pretend like nothing had happened. Even simple touches felt tainted. I tried to immerse myself in work, in friends, in anything that could distract me, but it all felt hollow. I went to the grocery store and felt my chest tighten seeing couples laughing, holding hands, simple interactions that reminded me of what we had lost, or rather, what he had lost and I was forced to watch slip away. At night, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, reliving every second, every gesture, every whisper. My mind became a carousel of betrayal, guilt, and anger, spinning so fast I couldn't step off. I tried to talk to friends, carefully omitting details, because I wasn't ready to expose my humiliation, my vulnerability. But even without saying anything, I felt like the secret was screaming from my pores. Then came the week he suggested a weekend getaway. "We need to reconnect," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him that the trust was gone, that it was broken beyond repair. But somewhere, deep down, I also wanted him to show me that he could care. I wanted him to prove, somehow, that he still valued what we had. We drove to a small lake town a few hours from home, the kind of place with cabins, hiking trails, and quiet streets. Normally, I would have felt excitement, escape, adventure, but all I felt was tension, like every step, every word, every glance was loaded with scrutiny. He tried to make conversation, tried to joke, tried to remind me of past trips, of past memories, but I kept thinking about Jessica. I kept thinking about him laughing at her jokes, leaning into her, smiling at her the way I wanted him to smile at me. It was impossible to enjoy anything when the memory of betrayal clung to me like a second skin. One night, after a long, silent dinner, we were sitting on the porch of the cabin. The air was cool, the lake reflecting moonlight, everything quiet. He reached for my hand. I flinched. My chest tightened. I wanted to pull away, but I didn't. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he had done, the consequence of his actions, the way I had been living every day since that Tuesday afternoon. And he looked at me, really looked at me, with that same pleading look, like he was asking for forgiveness before he had earned it. And in that moment, I realized something even more terrifying. I still loved him. Still. Despite everything, my heart was stubborn, my mind was screaming, but my body betrayed me. I felt the old pull, the familiarity, the ache of missing what we had before it was torn apart. But the betrayal had changed the texture of that love. It wasn't pure anymore. It was mixed with anger, with hurt, with distrust. We argued that night. I told him that I couldn't pretend anymore, that I couldn't go back to the way things were. He begged, he promised, he cried. I listened, and I felt the old warmth flicker just enough to make me doubt myself. Was this what love was supposed to feel like? Messy, complicated, sometimes agonizing? Or was it a warning sign, a red flag flashing so bright I couldn't ignore it? I didn't know. I only knew that I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop thinking about that first day I saw them. I couldn't stop thinking about Jessica, about him, about what our life had become, and the terrifying uncertainty of what it would become next. By the time we drove home, the tension hadn't left. The quiet streets of our suburban neighborhood felt different, heavier, filled with ghosts of things I couldn't change. I pulled into our driveway, and I hesitated before stepping out of the car. Mike looked at me, hopeful, probably thinking that the getaway had fixed things, that the intimacy, the history, the memories could be enough to patch the hole he had created. But I knew deep down that no weekend, no vacation, no words could erase what I had seen. I realized that the real challenge wasn't deciding whether to forgive him, it was deciding if I even could. And while I told myself I needed time, that I needed space to figure out what I wanted, there was also this lingering, gnawing feeling that maybe I had already lost him. Not completely, maybe, but enough that the foundation of our marriage had shifted forever. And the thought of that, of living day after day in the house that now felt like a stage for memories I didn't want to revisit, made me shiver.
Because the truth is, I didn't just catch him flirting. I caught the unraveling of a life I thought was mine, and the terrifying reality that some things, once seen, can never be unseen. The tension at home only got worse after that weekend. Every glance between us felt like a battlefield. I began noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. The way he laughed at his phone in the middle of the day, the little sighs when he thought I wasn't watching, the way he lingered in front of the mirror longer than necessary. I felt like a detective in my own life, cataloging every detail, trying to piece together the truth that he seemed intent on hiding. And the hardest part was that he didn't even realize how obvious it had become. It was like he thought small lies, little omissions, could erase the scene of him on my couch, whispering to Jessica. But nothing could undo that. One Thursday evening, I got home earlier than usual. I had left work after a client meeting dragged on too long, my mind restless and my nerves raw. I parked in the driveway, trying to calm my racing heart, but then I saw him, or at least I thought I saw him, through the blinds of our living room. His figure bent over something, hands moving quickly. My stomach sank. I watched him for what felt like minutes, heart pounding, mind spinning. And then I saw her, Jessica, sliding through the front door, carrying a bottle of wine, laughing softly at some private joke. My knees nearly buckled. I could feel my pulse in my throat, my hands trembling. I wanted to scream, I wanted to charge in, to confront them, to throw everything in sight across the room. But instead, I stayed hidden, just watching. Watching him lean toward her, watching her touch his arm lightly as she spoke, watching him respond in that soft, intimate tone that had haunted me for weeks. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely hold on to the blinds to keep from tipping over. I felt a deep, burning mix of rage, humiliation, and betrayal that made me want to vanish from my own life. That night, I realized that this wasn't just a flirtation anymore. The casual comments, the innocent touches, the quiet laughs, they were escalating, and I was powerless to stop it. When I finally stepped into the house, I confronted him. "How long?" I asked, voice low but shaking. "How long has this been happening?" He froze, eyes widening, and I saw the guilt, the panic, the shame all rolled into one. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. I don't know," he said finally, like admitting it could somehow absolve him. It's not what you think." I shook my head. "Not what you think." "Mike, I see it. I see everything. You're with her. You laugh at her jokes. You touch her. You flirt with her. That's not what I think. That's what is."
He looked down, unable to meet my eyes, and I felt the floor beneath me shift. The house, our life, it all felt unstable, like sand slipping through my fingers. We argued for hours that night. Every word, every gesture, every past grievance spilled out. I told him about the nights he said he was working late, about the little lies, about the moments I had brushed off as stress or busyness, but now realized were signs, warning signs I had ignored. And through it all, he didn't fight me. He just stood there, a mix of guilt and helplessness in his expression, trying to explain, to justify, to minimize, but nothing worked. Nothing could fix the damage. I could see it in him, in the way he avoided my gaze, in the way he flinched when I raised my voice. And that hurt even more than his betrayal, the way he knew he was guilty but seemed incapable of stopping. The days after that confrontation were worse. We slept in separate rooms. Our conversations were clipped, sterile. Even simple gestures felt loaded with meaning. I started noticing every small interaction he had with Jessica, or anyone really. Every laugh at the office, every text message, every mention of a coworker's name made my chest tighten. And the paranoia. It was exhausting, but I couldn't stop it. I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. It had become a lens through which I viewed everything. Then came a Saturday night that changed everything again. I had gone out with some friends, trying to escape this suffocating tension at home. I got a call from Mike around 10 p.m., and I could tell immediately it was different. He didn't say hello, he just asked me to come home. My stomach twisted, and I felt that same dread I'd been trying to push down for weeks. When I got home, the house was dark, quiet, but I could hear voices, soft, hushed, unmistakably theirs. I crept closer, and my worst fear was confirmed. Jessica was in our living room again, sitting on our couch with him, whispering, laughing, the intimacy between them almost tangible in the dim light. I froze. I didn't move. I couldn't. I felt my body betray me, heart racing, hands shaking. And then he looked up. He saw me. And that look, shock, panic, guilt, and fear all rolled together, was enough to make my knees buckle. I didn't know if I should scream, cry, or run, but I did something I never thought I could. I walked in, slammed the door behind me, and let the fury pour out. I screamed, I shouted, I demanded answers, but there were none that could satisfy the storm raging inside me. Jessica fled, clutching her coat, and Mike tried to explain, tried to justify, tried to say it wasn't serious, but I could see the truth in the tension between them, in the way he stood, in the way he avoided my gaze. After she left, we sat in silence. The air was thick, heavy, suffocating. I didn't know if I wanted to cry or hit him, or both. The betrayal wasn't just about what happened. It was about the lies, the deceit, the small, insidious ways he had chipped away at everything we had built together. I felt hollow, numb, but also like my chest was being crushed from the inside. And yet, I couldn't help but notice the old pull of love, that stubborn, painful attachment that made me want to reach for him even as I wanted to push him away. The following week was a blur. I spent hours pacing the house, drinking too much coffee, staring out the window, imagining every possible scenario. I thought about packing a bag, about leaving, about finally reclaiming my life. But every time I imagined walking away, I also imagined the life we had built, the memories, the history, the moments that had felt real. I felt trapped between anger and love, betrayal and memory, suspicion and hope. Work became my escape. I buried myself in spreadsheets, client calls, and meetings, anything to keep my mind occupied. But no matter what I did, every sound, every laugh, every glance reminded me of him and her. I became obsessive, checking his phone when he left the room, scanning his messages, noting the times he left work late, the way he talked about coworkers. I hated myself for it, hated that I had become someone I didn't recognize, but the fear of being blindsided again was overwhelming. Then, one evening, I found a note on the kitchen counter. It wasn't a letter, not really, just a small slip of paper with messy handwriting. I know I've hurt you. I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try. Please talk to me. My first instinct was to crumple it, to throw it away, to ignore it entirely. But something made me pick it up. The words were simple, but they carried a weight I couldn't ignore.
He knew he had destroyed trust, and he was acknowledging it. And somehow that acknowledgement made the hurt feel even sharper. The fact that he recognized it, that he admitted it, but still expected something from me, it was infuriating. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know if I wanted to forgive or explode, to retreat or confront, to stay or leave. That night we talked. Not the shouting, raw confrontation kind, but the quiet, tense, fragile conversation where everything hung in the balance. He admitted he had feelings for her, that he had been drawn into something he shouldn't have, and that he realized how much he had jeopardized our marriage.
I listened, heart pounding, mind spinning, wondering how love could coexist with betrayal, how trust could be rebuilt when it had been shattered so thoroughly. I asked questions, demanded details, tried to understand the what, the why, the when, but his answers felt incomplete. In some ways, that made it worse. Every partial truth was a reminder of what I didn't know, what I couldn't control, what had been stolen from me. By the time we went to bed, I felt exhausted, drained, emotionally raw in ways I hadn't known existed. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every gesture, every whisper of laughter between them. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I realized that my life had become a series of fractured moments, each one colored by suspicion, hurt, anger, and love, all tangled together in a knot I couldn't untangle. And through it all, I couldn't escape one brutal truth. This wasn't just about him or her or that single Tuesday afternoon. This was about the unraveling of a life, the exposure of cracks I had ignored for too long, the realization that love and betrayal could coexist in the same space, in the same heart. And while I wanted to hate him completely, while I wanted to leave and reclaim what I thought was mine, I also couldn't help but remember the man I had married, the life we had built, the love that had once felt unshakable. I knew deep down that whatever came next, there was no going back. Not fully. Not to the way things were. And that realization, terrifying, painful, heartbreaking, was something I was going to carry with me for the rest of my life, whether I stayed or left, whether we survived this or not. The world I had known had changed, shifted irreversibly in a way that left me raw, exposed, and aching. And in the quiet moments when the house was still and the night pressed against the windows, I would lie awake, heart racing, mind spinning, knowing that nothing would ever feel the same again. The weeks that followed felt like I was living in a different dimension, one where every familiar thing had been altered just enough to make it strange, uncomfortable, and unbearable. I would wake up in the morning and hear the creak of the floorboards, and for a moment I'd think, is she here? Is this happening again? My mind was constantly running through scenarios, dissecting every interaction, every glance, every word he said. I began sleeping with the bedroom door locked, checking the locks on the front and back doors multiple times a day, and constantly scanning his phone, his emails, his messages. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. That level of distrust had seeped into every fiber of me, and no amount of rationalization could push it back. One evening, I came home from work to find him sitting at the kitchen table, a half-empty glass of wine in front of him, staring at the floor. His face was pale, drawn, eyes heavy with guilt. I could feel the tension radiating off him even before I said a word. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low and sharp. He looked up at me, a flicker of hope in his expression, and I could feel my own resolve waver, even though anger still coursed through my veins. "I want to be honest," he said quietly. "I want to fix this." I laughed, but it was bitter, hollow. "Fix this? Mate, you've destroyed everything. Do you even understand what you've done? Do you get what it feels like to see your husband touching someone else in your own living room?" My voice cracked, and for a moment he just sat there, silent, taking it all in. He started talking, his words spilling out in a rush, trying to explain, to rationalize, to make sense of the chaos he'd caused. He admitted that it had started as innocent, small flirting, jokes, a little attention, but it escalated. And that escalation, he said, had been his fault, his choice, his weakness. I listened, a part of me trying to understand, another part seething with the rawest kind of rage I'd ever felt. He tried to reach for me, to touch my hand, but I pulled away, feeling physically repulsed and emotionally raw at the same time. It was like the intimacy we once shared had been poisoned, irreversibly altered, and no apology could cleanse it. Over the next few days, the house was heavy with silence. Every step, every noise, every glance became loaded with suspicion. I started imagining scenarios where she was at her house when I wasn't home, where he was laughing at her texts in the middle of the night. I would pace our living room, staring at the couch, tracing with my eyes the spot where she had sat, where he had leaned toward her. It became unbearable. I began fantasizing about packing a bag and leaving, imagining myself driving away and never looking back. But then I remembered the life we had built together, the home, the routines, the history, and the painful stubbornness of love that refused to let go. One Friday night, he came home late, smelling faintly of her perfume. I couldn't help it. I asked, "Were you with her today?" My voice was flat, exhausted, raw. He hesitated, then admitted that they had met for coffee. That simple admission made my stomach twist, and I felt bile rise in my throat. I left the kitchen and went to the bedroom, shutting the door so hard it rattled the frame. I sat on the bed, shaking, crying, feeling the betrayal like a live wire inside me. Every lie, every omission, every subtle touch I had ignored over the past months came rushing back. I felt like my whole life had been a stage, and I'd been nothing more than an audience, helplessly watching my own happiness being dismantled in slow motion. The following week, I reached my breaking point. I couldn't function at work, at home, anywhere. Every interaction with him felt like a test, a minefield I had to navigate. I finally decided I couldn't live like this anymore, in constant fear, doubt, and betrayal. I told him I needed space. I moved into the guest bedroom with a bag of clothes, locking the door behind me, and sat there in the dark, listening to the house breathe, to him moving around, trying to carry on as if nothing had happened. But nothing could ever be the same. I realized that even if I forgave him, even if I tried to rebuild, the image of what I had seen, the intimacy, the laughter, the whispered words, would always linger, haunting me. Days passed like this, and then came a Sunday afternoon that would change everything. I had gone out for a walk, needing air, needing space from the suffocating tension at home. When I returned, I found her, Jessica, standing on our porch, whinnying with that bright, friendly smile that used to make me sick to my stomach. My hands clenched, my body freezing. I wanted to scream, to throw her out, to confront her, but instead I just stared.
She stepped inside, holding a bottle of wine, smiling like it was some casual social visit. My stomach lurched. Before I could say anything, Mike appeared, startled, like he hadn't expected me to see her. I felt my knees go weak, my chest tighten, and my entire body betray me with panic. The confrontation that followed was explosive. I yelled, I cried, I demanded explanations. Mike tried to justify, tried to explain, tried to claim it was nothing serious, but I couldn't hear it. The sight of her there, in our house, smiling like nothing had happened, brought every feeling I had suppressed to the surface. Rage, betrayal, humiliation, heartbreak. She left eventually, sensing the storm, but the damage was done. Mike and I were left alone, the silence between us heavier than any words could be. That night, lying in the dark, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust, it was a fracture in the very foundation of our life. The routines, the memories, the small daily joys, they all felt poisoned now. In the weeks that followed, I tried to regain control, to reclaim a sense of normalcy. I threw myself into work, spending long hours at the office, avoiding home as much as possible. I started seeing a therapist, someone to help me untangle the mess of anger, guilt, and heartbreak that had taken over my life. But nothing could completely shield me from the constant reminders. Every time I saw them interact in the neighborhood, every time I imagined him with her, every time I remembered that Tuesday afternoon, my chest would tighten, and I'd feel that familiar hollow ache. I had to accept that some things could never be unseen, that some betrayals leave scars no therapy, no time, no words could erase. One night, after weeks of tense silence, we finally had a long, raw conversation. No yelling this time, just tears and trembling voices. He admitted everything, how it started, how it escalated, how he had been drawn into something he shouldn't have. He begged for forgiveness, for a chance to rebuild, for me to understand that he still loved me. I listened, heart pounding, mind spinning, torn between the pull of old love and the reality of his betrayal. I wanted to hate him completely, to walk away and never look back. But the memories of our life together, the intimacy, the shared history, made that impossible. The love was still there, stubborn, painful, complicated. We spent hours talking, piecing together fragments of trust, trying to find a way forward. I told him I needed transparency, I needed honesty, I needed him to prove every single day that he was committed. He promised, tears streaming down his face, promising that he would do anything to rebuild what he had destroyed. And I believed him, in a cautious, fragile way. But deep down, I knew the truth. Trust, once shattered, doesn't return fully. It can be rebuilt, yes, but the cracks remain, hidden just beneath the surface. And one wrong move, one slip, can bring everything crashing down again. In the weeks and months that followed, we tried. It wasn't easy. Every small interaction felt loaded, every gesture scrutinized. I watched him closely, measured every word, every laugh, every glance. And in that scrutiny, I realized that the betrayal had changed me too. I had become stronger, more vigilant, less willing to accept excuses. I had learned to protect myself, even within my own marriage. And while we slowly rebuilt a semblance of normalcy, a shadow always lingered. A reminder of the Tuesday afternoon when I saw him with her, the
the moment that forever altered the course of our life. Even now, months later, I still carry that image with me. I still catch myself imagining what they might be doing, the way he looked at her, the intimacy that never should have existed. And yet, somehow, I've learned to live with it. The love hasn't disappeared, but it has changed. It's cautious, tempered, wary. I have learned that some betrayals don't end with anger. They linger, they reshape, they redefine what it means to trust, to love, to stay. And in that lingering, in that reshaping, I found a strange, fragile strength, a knowledge that I survived, that I endured, that even when the people you love break you, you can still choose how to move forward, how to protect yourself, and how to keep living, even when everything you thought was secure has been shattered.